Most companies think scaling AI is a technical problem. Buy more compute, add more API calls, expand the model, ship it to more departments. That's the assumption, and it sounds reasonable until you watch what actually happens inside organizations that try it, because the failure mode isn't where anyone expects it to be. My name is Ronald. What you're looking at is an AI clone built on purpose, because AI is already embedded in how I work every day. I'm the founder of Data Wonder, a company that builds AI automation and voice agent systems for real businesses. Insurance companies, accounting firms, medical clinics. Organizations where the work is sensitive, the processes are complex, and the cost of getting it wrong is not abstract. This channel exists because most AI content is either shallow tutorials or speculative noise. What I'm interested in is what actually happens when AI meets a real organization, the decisions, the consequences, and the second-order effects that nobody saw coming. If that's what you're looking for, subscribe. No pressure, just stay if this is useful. Now, back to the question this video is actually about. AI doesn't scale the way you think it does, and I don't mean that as a criticism of the technology. The technology scales fine. What doesn't scale is everything around it. Let me explain what I mean by walking through something I've seen more than once. A company identifies a problem, usually something repetitive and high volume. Document processing, inbound call handling, routine client communication. They build a solution, it works well, and leadership gets excited. They say, let's roll this out across the other departments. Let's expand this. Let's get the whole organization on this. That's where the trouble starts. Not immediately, not visibly, but it starts there. The second department tries to adopt the same system, and it almost works. But the data structure is slightly different. The workflow has a different owner. The edge cases are new. Someone needs to approve exceptions manually, and nobody's sure who that is anymore. The system that worked cleanly in one context starts generating friction in another. And here's what typically happens next. Have you seen this in your own organization? The technical team gets pulled in to patch the gaps. The patches accumulate. The system becomes harder to maintain. And somewhere in a meeting room, someone says, maybe this AI thing isn't quite ready yet. But the technology hasn't changed. The AI isn't failing. What's failing is the organizational layer underneath it. There's a reason this happens so consistently, and it has almost nothing to do with the models or the infrastructure. First, let me show you what scaling AI actually requires versus what most companies think it requires. The common assumption is that AI scales like software. You build it once, you deploy it broadly, and the marginal cost per additional use drops towards zero. And that's true for the compute layer. It's absolutely true. But AI in a business context doesn't live at the compute layer. It lives inside workflows. It touches decisions. It interfaces with people, data systems, compliance requirements, and organizational habits that have built up over years, sometimes decades. And those things don't scale like software. When you deploy an AI system into a second department, you're not just copying the model. You're trying to replicate the entire context that made the first deployment work. The data quality, the ownership structure, the exception handling process, the informal knowledge that the first team built up through trial and error. This is the education gap I encounter most often in my work. Companies understand the AI part. They don't understand the infrastructure of trust and process that has to exist underneath it. And here's the pattern interrupt. The companies that scale AI most effectively are usually the ones that invested the least in fancy technology and the most in structural clarity before deployment. If you found that useful, a like on this video helps more people find it. I want to be more specific, because abstract observations are easy to agree with and easy to forget. Think about a medical clinic trying to scale an AI scheduling and intake system across multiple locations. The first location works well. The staff adapted. The data is clean. The workflows were documented. So the decision is made to roll it out to 3 more locations simultaneously. Location 2 has different intake forms. Location 3 uses a different patient management system. Location 4 has a clinic manager who's skeptical and has quietly instructed the front desk to double-check everything the AI outputs, manually, before acting on it. Now you have 3 different technical integrations, 3 different staff relationships with the system, and 1 location where a human is replicating the work the AI is already doing, which costs more than before the AI was deployed. The AI is doing exactly what it was built to do, but the organization scaled before the organizational conditions were in place to support it. This is the real bottleneck. Not compute, not model capability, not budget. It's organizational readiness. And most companies have no framework for measuring it. But that's not even the real problem. There's a second-order effect underneath this that I haven't mentioned yet, and it's the one that actually determines whether AI creates compounding value or just creates compounding maintenance costs. Here's where the main tension in this video resolves. When AI gets deployed into an organization without clear ownership, without explicit exception handling, and without honest process documentation, it doesn't fail cleanly. It fails slowly. It degrades over time in ways that are hard to detect. The model's output drifts slightly from the original intent. Edge cases accumulate, and no one has the mandate to address them. The team that built the system moves on to other projects, and the people using the system start building workarounds, small, invisible workarounds that make the day-to-day work function, but that quietly disconnect the system from the original design. 6 months later, the AI is technically running, but functionally, it's running half the process it was supposed to run, and humans are manually compensating for the other half, without anyone formally acknowledging that's what's happening. I've seen this in accounting firms handling compliance workflows. I've seen it in insurance companies, where a voice agent was deployed to handle inbound queries, and within 4 months, the front office had developed an informal protocol to just transfer anything that sounds complicated, which turned out to be 40% of calls. The AI isn't broken. The ownership structure around the AI is broken. And here's why this matters for scaling. When you try to expand a system that's already degrading in this way, you don't just scale the system, you scale the degradation. Every new deployment inherits the structural problems of the first one. The workarounds multiply, the maintenance cost grows, and the ROI that was supposed to compound instead starts to erode. This is what I mean when I say AI doesn't scale the way you think it does. The technical scaling is the easy part. The organizational scaling, the part that requires clear ownership, documented processes, honest exception handling, and an explicit governance structure around each AI system. That's where most initiatives quietly fall apart. Does this sound familiar? If you're in a leadership or operations role at a company that's been expanding AI usage, I'd guess there's at least one system in your organization right now that's in this exact state. Running technically, drifting functionally. So what's the actual takeaway here? Not that AI is hard to scale. It isn't, once you understand what you're actually scaling. The takeaway is that before you expand an AI deployment, you need to answer 3 questions at the organizational level, not the technical level. Who owns this system? Not the vendor, not the IT team. One person internally who is accountable for what it does and responsible for what it doesn't do. What happens when the system fails or produces unexpected output? Is there a documented path? Is it a real path that people actually follow? Or is it a theoretical path that exists only on paper? And finally, are the conditions that made the first deployment work actually present in the next environment? Not approximately present. If you can't answer all 3 clearly before you expand, you're not scaling AI. You're scaling ambiguity. The companies that get this right aren't the ones with the most sophisticated models or the largest AI budgets. They're the ones that treat organizational readiness as a prerequisite, not an afterthought. That's the distinction. and it's the one that almost never gets mentioned in any conversation about AI at scale. If what I described today sounds like what's happening inside your company, systems running but drifting, expansions creating more friction than efficiency, ownership unclear, you can book a free call with me. The link is right below this video,